All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. Really excited to bring our guest to you today. Not only is he brilliant at delivering a paid media service, that his angle, his approach is very different than what is commonly shared, but he's been recognized 11 times. Imagine that, 11 times by the Inc. 5000 and the Financial Times 500. So, it's a gentleman that he knows his stuff. You don't get recognized that many times by accident. So, without further ado, the CEO and founder of Brill Media, Robert Brill, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Charles. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Let me ask you a question. And I want to get into sort of like more tactical stuff because you've showed me some stuff that was pretty wild. In fact, just so our audience knows, Robert spoke to the members of our board of directors program, and it was one of the most highly rated sessions that we've had. He did an extraordinary job just because the way that he goes about and generates leads is different than anything I've heard before. We work with a lot of different agencies. And so we'll be getting to that in a little bit. But before we do, Robert, it's no accident how somebody can get recognized by the Inc. 5000 and Financial Times 11 times, right? What would you say is the biggest attributing factor to that success?
It's the boring stuff, standard operating procedure. It's the not so boring stuff, relationships. And I think it's grit. It's like being able to deal with all the stress and anxiety and having the fortitude to carry on even in on the days that just feel like curling up into bed and hiding.
Especially over recent times, I think over recent times for many business owners, one of the things that I've heard is that this past year was even harder than the 2008 housing crisis. For most people, it was the hardest year that they've ever been in business, significantly harder than COVID than, for many people. Did you experience something similar?
Yeah, the COVID time was really bad, and then the end of the year kind of, like, worked out. I think there's a lot of change happening in the marketplace right now. I talked to a friend over the weekend, he says, "No one's putting in any personal bests this year, to say the least." Yeah, there's difficulty across the board, and it requires, smart people like you to kind of like help us get outside of ourselves, get outside of our heads, and think about other ways to approach the marketplace, communicate more effectively, double down on the fundamentals of, like, in our case, B2B marketing. And really, I vowed this year to never be in business again without coaching or masterminds. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that you're driving a lot of insight for us.
Well, thank you, man. I mean, together we're better. And it goes both ways. As I mentioned, you were one of the highest rated speakers that we've had. It was really extraordinary. The interesting thing about the challenging times in the market, those who are having the biggest troubles are because they're looking at the last year as a bad economy, but rather than adapting to the economy, they're doing the same thing, only they're either doing less of it because they laid people off, or they're doing more of it by just screaming louder or pushing more and whatnot. And it's not working because I've been quoted many times saying there's no such thing as a good economy or a bad economy. They're different economies. And we know that in today's marketplace, they're far more discerning and they're more careful. And I was just on the phone with another coach, and one of the things that was discussed was just the nature of what people are buying right now. And you think that people are buying, in your case, let's just say in agencies, right? We think that people just want a heck of a lot more leads and so forth, or a heck of a lot more sales. But underneath it all, what they're looking for is confidence. They just want the confidence of knowing that if I spend money with you, then I'm actually going to get a result, right? Because there's just a lot of worry and concern over payroll, worry and concern over just making enough money to pay their bills and all this other stuff. But if you can adapt the message and sell more confidence than anybody else in your marketplace, now you're going to get an advantage. So then the question becomes like, well, how do you sell confidence, right? Of course, the typical stuff, the case studies, the testimonials, all that other stuff is an important part of confidence. Another part that is often overlooked is the message market match. When you can tap into the same conversation that they're having in their head and use the words that they just thought about, all of a sudden they go, whoa, you've done this before. Like, you get me. And if you get me, then Robert, what do you think is going to end up? What's the conclusion they're going to come to? If they say, "Oh man, you get me," what do you think the conclusion is?
They know how to solve my problem.
They know how to solve my problem. So I think that's a good segue into, how do you find a good message market match? This is part of, your unique IP that you walked us through the other day that I thought was just really, really a fascinating, wonderful approach.
Yeah, so the thing that unites all of us around the world on every continent, people speaking every language, is we all have problems. And when you can orient your marketing messages around the problems that people focus on, it's a direct path to sales.
Mhm,
So what we do is we have a system that we can guarantee a 15% conversion rate off of a landing page from cold traffic because we have a system to understand the exact problems that people are facing that your business solves for. We know how to meet them where they're at. We know how to craft transformation, how to achieve benefit without a pain in a period of time. And
mhm,
the fundamental idea is when you craft your messages around knowing exactly the problem that a customer is facing, you are moving away from marketing guesswork and turning marketing into a growth engine. Because I believe most businesses, even the large ones, are guessing about the marketing messages at work and they spend a ton of money, a ton of time, and they're not maximizing their ROI because they're just guessing. And when you guess, as you like to say, it's a cancer to business.
for sure. How do we eliminate this guesswork, and how do we know what that message is? Because let's face it, I think you and I talked about this earlier. What we believe is the right message is almost always wrong.
Because it's hard to be a person inside a business trying to identify what exactly the outside person wants, which is why agencies sometimes have the worst marketing because we're busy building other businesses, and why a lot of businesses need an outside entity to help them see what they're unable to see themselves. So the idea is low cost, high impact tests.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, we can quote unquote pull the audience or see what a small group of audiences want from our business. So what we do is we look at 5 million people, we run ads on Meta. We don't spend a lot of money on any given message, but fundamentally over time you start to understand the exact positioning of a product that people want you to solve for. Even for complex products, there's usually a way to meet a customer where they're at. And we do this with dog whistles. And the idea is when you have the ability to call out an individual, either by the way they're feeling or their job title or the type of life they live or some really easy identifier, something simple as, hey, CEOs or hey, agencies or hey, hiring managers, you alert the user that you're talking directly to them. About 1.5 to 2 seconds in an ad to capture their attention with a headline that resonates.
Hmm.
And that headline that resonates is not guess. It's a direct result of understanding the problem and giving them a solution to that problem. In the next half a second, you have an image, and that image needs to be congruent to the message you just shared. So it has to, in the mind, tell them, yes, this further speaks to the entire marketing message that we're talking about. And then finally, at the top of the ad, you're going to have the primary text. You have another few half seconds there to tell the person this is exactly what you're looking for. Here's some interesting insight about it. And the goal of that ad is to get the user to click to your landing page and that your landing page pays off the message that you had in the ad. That's how you get a conversion, either email address plus phone number. That's how you get people to buy stuff from you or at least share their information for a free offer. And that's how we can guarantee a 15% conversion rate.
Now, many people who have done this before are like, wait a minute, we're only talking about A/B split testing, right? So what's the difference between A/B split testing and what you're talking about?
Yeah, so in the duration of our sprint testing process to go from problem to successful landing page, we're testing anywhere between 100 and 200 different elements. When you're looking at A/B testing, that implies that you're testing 1 or 2 things, and you might be testing a few down the line. But what you don't wanna be doing is spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing messages just to find out when you're spending all that money that your ads aren't the best ads that you have. What you'd rather do is spend hundreds of dollars or even thousands of dollars to understand which of the 200 messages build a really great story for your customers, and then spend your tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on those ideal optimal messages that you have.
And just as an example, if you just look at one element of it, just the problem statements alone, first of all, everything goes into silos and buckets. You don't get to step two until you go to step one and so forth. But step one is testing those problem statements. And through Robert's methodology and his IP, it starts with 60 problem statements. So we're not talking two, we're not talking three, we're talking 60 different problem statements. And so that part is really important to understand. For me, I always thought, well, I understand my buyer, right? But the reality is the more I understand my buyer, the more I realize I don't understand my buyer to the same level. In other words, here's what I'm saying. I'm a business coach, which means that I know the questions to ask and I know the answers. For many people that are engaging with us for the first time, they don't even realize the problem that they have right now. And the thing is for you, when you look at media, you just think it's so obvious. For me, like half the time, I'm like, I'm not even going to say this because it's just so obvious. Like, I don't want to bore people to tears. And then I might just like throw it out there. And all of a sudden, people are like, oh my God, that was crazy. Where'd you come up with that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I thought everybody knew it, that type of thing. We all do that in our own industry, whether you're consultants or media buying or you're in tech or whatever that might be. It doesn't really matter. Like we all have these areas where we're just so it so well, you just assume everybody else knows it.
Yeah. And, look, I think customers often want something different than you think they want, and that's just the reality of the marketplace.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, I'll take an example of an agency, right? Like people, I can go in the weeds. I'm thinking about myself not many years ago, but like let's say 2019. I'm thinking of myself 2019. What do people want? They want high ROAS, e-commerce sales, they want better media buying, but what they really want is programmatic. So here's the thing. The marketplace, even execs at Fortune 500 companies, different definitions of what programmatic advertising even is. All it is you're buying ads on Hulu and Paramount Plus and banners on the web, etc. If I go to the market, like right now, your viewership just dropped because I just made the conversation so boring and so jargony and so esoteric. Who the heck cares about programmatic? What you actually want are leads and freaking sales. What you also want is that predictable, repeatable, and scalable business growth. What you want is time with your kids, or in my case, 40 Dodgers games a year. That's what you actually want. That's why you have a business. No one got into business because of invoicing or standard operating procedure or to do your accounting. You got into business to do the work that you love to do and to maybe have a better life, right? But if I come to you and talk about programmatic advertising, done, over your head, you're not even paying attention to me. Which means when I go into market talking about these things that are so esoteric to my business, I can't even get you in the door because I am not meeting you where you're at. What you want are more sales so you can have predictability. What you want is more time with your family. What you want is not to worry about your bank account. Or you maybe want status, or maybe you want to be really deep into your charitable work, or maybe you want to hang out with different groups of people. Whatever the case is, you want time, you want affection, you want stability, you want something there. My job as a marketer, whether I'm marketing your business, another business, my business, is to say something that compels you to come to me. And if I talk about things that you don't care about, you will never come to me. What matters is the language, the verbatim language that people use so that you can spend your time coming to me so I can solve your problems, because I have the solution to your problems, and that's what I need the marketing message to do.
And as a perfect example, when we talk about the message market match and cutting through the noise and whatnot. So I was at a baseball game many years ago with my son, right? And it was so loud. They had the music going, people are screaming and they're cheering. And it's just like, and the thing is, it's undistinguishable noise because it's so loud. It's just a roar of just all over the place, right? And then all of a sudden I hear, Charlie. And I stop and I look over my shoulder, and it's an old college friend of mine that is several rows above me, right? So think about that. In a stadium with thousands and thousands of people, music, screaming, everything, somebody yells, Charlie, and that's enough to just cut right through the noise, get my attention, and turn around. And marketing does the exact same thing. If you just drive home with a message that speaks so clearly to that one person, they'll pay attention.
Yeah, shooting fish in a barrel. I just had this conversation with a client and they're like, "Well, the thing that we're talking about right now is there's so many other features." Like, yeah, but who cares about those other features? If you can get a bunch of people who want the thing that you have off of that one feature, you can sell them later. Like, you can tell your prospective clients all the 10 features that you have, but you need something to hook them so you get a chance to tell them about the other 10 features.
It's interesting. This is a good point. So it's like not too long ago, I bought a new TV. Unfortunately, the sales rep was just not very skilled. And it was annoying and frustrating because he took me to one TV after another to talk about all the different features, the pixels, the technology, this, that, everything else. All I wanted was a TV that looked badass in my living room. That's it. So that when people walked into my home, that the TV made a statement. It was just badass in the living room, and it had a sound system that when the helicopters fly over, like I want to be looking over my shoulders to figure out where it's going, right? Like I don't care about anything else. I want a badass TV with a really cool sound system. End of story.
Right.
But it's like, and the thing is to use a TV example, some people are just like, I want something, so I feel like I'm at the game when I'm watching TV, or I want something for gaming so that, I'm this and that, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, rarely are you going to find, it's going to be probably about 1 to 3% of the audience, or rarely are you going to find somebody that is like, I need to have a TV that has X amount of this and that, blah, blah. It doesn't work that way.
Mm. Yeah.
When you look at your buyer, for example, like you have a formula that's going to drive people for leads. And I know you white label most of the work. So, you work with a lot of agencies and you white label a lot of their stuff. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I believe is that those people aren't coming to you, even though they're a sophisticated buyer, wanting to know exactly how you bake the cake. They want to know exactly how you do this, exactly how you do that. Instead, what I believe that they want to know is what is that client experience going to be like when somebody works with you, and what type of results are you going to deliver so that I feel like I can confidently hand a buyer over to you and it not blow back on me.
100%. What's the benefit? What's the experience gonna be like? How will I benefit? How will my life be transformed? How will my life be better? What pain will you eliminate from my life?
Yeah. How much more work are you going to give me?
So a lot of our clients are other agencies. They come to us for media buying, and we work on big brands, and we're just the media team working at other agencies. And when they white label us, we set up systems, processes, procedures because we know how to. We've taken the template. We know it works. And by the way, the language that gets people in is this: I need a partner who can handle big campaigns so we can target larger clients confidently. That's the proven language that drives leads that turns into sales for us.
And here's the thing, that's the center of your bullseye,
Yeah.
right? That's the center of your bullseye.
Yeah.
You're not trying to appeal to the next ring or the next ring or the next ring or everybody. And that's where, if lead generation is hard for you, it's because you haven't defined your bullseye. You're not marketing right to the bullseye, right? So that message works really great for several people. Obviously, in your case, it works great for several people, but there are going to be agency owners who are listening that are going, yeah, it's not for me. But that's great because you know who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with.
Right. You know who it's not for? It's for the agency. I'm not here saying anything about price.
Yeah,
We're not cheap.
no.
$500 ad buys, $500 per account. Like, okay, that's not us. That's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're here for so you can target larger clients confidently. And there's dog whistles and there's this language in there, larger clients. You want to grow, you want to earn larger revenues. All of that comes because of all the reasons we've been successful. We have the smart scale system. We drive 680% average ROAS for campaigns. But what you need is more money coming in. You're not going to cheap out. Because if you want to cheap out, you can go to Upwork.
Yeah.
There's great people on Upwork, 100%.
Yeah.
If you want to cheap out, you can hire someone relatively junior in-house and try to make that work. But if you want standard operating procedure and all the other benefits of our experience and our case studies and our prowess, that's the type of client that comes to us.
Mm,
And we turn away a lot of clients who don't want to pay our fair rate because they don't see it that way. That's not our people. You got to find your people,
yeah.
to your point.
So you're dealing with people who want larger clients, right? So you're dealing with a much more affluent market. And what I've learned is that as you're dealing with an affluent market, the things that are most important to them are time, value, results, experience, that type of thing. When you're dealing with a lower, it wouldn't be a lower affluent, it would be like a market with less money, right?
Cost conscious.
Cost conscious, right? Instead, they're so focused on price, like they don't care as much about the experience, but they're going to put so much pressure on you because they're expecting unicorn results over and over again. I had this conversation with somebody recently who was debating about price. And they're like, oh, we want to lower our prices. We want to do this and that. I'm like, you have a choice that you can make in your business. You can either be the Walmart, and Walmart does great, but they're always having, I mean, it's a tough business when there's always, other companies that can go in and sell something for 5 cents cheaper, and then you're going to lose it to somebody else, right? But you can be the Walmart of business, or you could be the Nordstrom of business. Like the choice ultimately is yours. So if you're the Walmart, you got to expect heavy volume, and you can't deliver the type of experience that you would be delivering at Nordstrom. At Nordstrom, people who buy at Nordstrom value the experience a lot more. If you look at the customer service, I bet Nordstrom's customer service, those people probably enjoy their jobs a whole heck of a lot more than the Walmart customer service, right? Because as you get to more cost conscious, they tend to be oftentimes a little bit more nitpicky and sometimes very unreasonable. For the more affluent, they understand things at a different level because they value things differently. And so the same thing happens every industry across the board. You can be a Walmart agency or you could be a Nordstrom agency. And clearly you're leaning more on the Nordstrom agency. You're targeting a much more affluent buyer.
And there's trigger words. There's those dog whistles in our language that speaks to those people.
Yeah.
And the lack of language in our marketing messages that don't speak to other people. And that's what you've ultimately got to find. You've got to find all you're doing with an ad is just to hook them in with something simple.
Yeah. I do want to talk about price for a minute because now that we talked about open the door, I think it is kind of important. So many years ago, I was out in Kentucky. And when I was in Kentucky, I was there to help rebuild some homes and all this other fun stuff to help like the poor areas there. And so it was one time where we brought all the neighborhood kids into one location and we were housing a giant barbecue for everybody and the whole deal. The thing is this girl came in, this little girl, somewhere between, I don't know, say 7 and 9 years old, maybe somewhere around there. She had no shirt on and shorts and burned marks on her legs and no shoes. You could tell she was super self-conscious. She had no shirt on, little girl. So I went into my bag, grabbed her shirt, just gave her one of my T-shirts, but I got pissed because driving to the location, I noticed that there were, fairly decent cars parked in the driveway. Most people had a satellite dish. Most people had an above ground pool. And yet they're spending all this money on this stuff and they can't put a shirt on their kid. And so I went to the event coordinator and I was pissed. I was fuming. I was saying things that, maybe I probably shouldn't have at the time, but it was just like being just a human and having some compassion and looking at these kids. Like, it's hard not to get angry. And he said something to me that I'll never forget. And he said, Charlie, people always find money for the things that are most important to them. Think about that for a minute. People always find the money for the things that are most important to them. So when you're talking about what it is that you're delivering and the product and the service and everything that you're delivering, it doesn't matter what you charge. If they believe and are confident in your ability to deliver on that and produce, an ROI as a business owner, right? Your biggest task is, what message do I have to convey to my market so that they know confidently that I understand them, I understand their problem, and I have a solution and will be able to deliver the solution. And I know one of the parts of the test that you and I have spoken about is you're not just testing the problem statements, you're not just testing the solutions, but you're going so far as you're testing the testimonials.
One of the most underrated parts of this process is the testimonials. So, I've seen all kinds of testimonials. There's, like, page-long websites of testimonials and, like, interview style things. There's paragraphs of testimonials. In every testimonial, there's usually at least one, if not more, series of 10 to 15 words that really encapsulate the transformation that you provide. And it's there when people are spending money, whether it's $89 or $890,000, someone is gonna say who's visiting your website, "Boy, I'm not sure if I believe this. I'm not sure. Are you full of it?" Like, that's
Mhm.
fundamentally what you're trying to argue against.
Yeah.
And your testimonial, when crafted correctly, has the ability to override that voice in the person's head, because you have someone who's willing to put their name, their title, their face in a really well-crafted set of 10 to 15 words that will tell your story for you in a really profound way,
Mm,
because it's not you telling your story, it's someone else
yeah.
who says nice things about you. And this could be for customer reviews and certainly professional services, high value, high ticket professional services, even more valuable. So what we do is we conduct these tests. We're testing anywhere from 10 to 30 different versions of your testimonials to understand what phrasing really resonates. And I'll tell you, the testimonial that resonates for us is we had an agency come to us with over 50 different small businesses, and we turned their $85,000 of loss every month because they weren't running Google Ads effectively into $36,000 a month of profit
Wow.
in 3 months.
Amazing.
I use that testimonial everywhere because the way it's phrased really, like, just tells a story.
It's funny because as a business coach, like, I had always thought that, okay, I want to highlight the testimonials where the people are demonstrating how much money that they've made in working with us, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, we have a client that we helped go from 950,000 to 46 million in 6 years. And you would think like a testimonial like that would actually be the winner. But one of the challenges that people have right now is that they don't trust themselves to be able to deliver on something like that or to be able to create that type of result for themselves. Sure, you could do it for everybody else, but I just don't think that's going to be for me. So, a much more attractive testimonial, believe it or not, instead of all this, rapid growth, is something more tied of the experience, more about consistency and stability and predictability, right? But that's because that's my market. Another business coach could be like, hey, I heard this podcast where Charlie was talking. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to market predictability and everything, but it may not work for them either. Like what works for you, Robert, guaranteed if there's another white label marketing agency and they go, I'm going to take what Robert says, I'm going to do it. It's not going to work for them. But why is that?
It's inauthentic. Your marketing messages are telling an aggregate of your story, and it has to be authentic. Anyone can copy our website as they like, and it will be inauthentic to even if they get to a sales call. The vibe on the sales conversation will be very different. Brill Media is a reflection of Robert Brill. To your point, actually, I looked up our second case study, or I'm sorry, our second testimonial that we use because we used 2 of them. And I was like, I didn't know why this is so good, but I think it falls in line with what you just said. Our second case study, or I'm sorry, our second testimony that works really well. This is the entire phrase. They will always give you the honest and trustworthy answers you need to hear. Like, wow, that's interesting. It's like exactly in line with what you just said. So thank you for that nugget there. Contextualizing it for me.
No worries. It is fascinating. I was flown up to Agora Financial several years ago, and the gentleman who flew me up there, he says, "Let's go for a walk. I want to show you, around." And they have all these buildings, and he said, "See all these buildings over here? They're all filled with copywriters." And I'm like, "Oh, that's fascinating." And he's like, what's more fascinating is the fact that we bring in the best copywriters on the planet. They all want to come work for Agora, right? Yeah, $1 billion+ direct marketing company. And he said, one of the rules is that you always have to test your message because more often than not, what you believe is going to win will actually not. And I'm like, "Really?" And sure enough, as I've been paying attention more and more, I'm like, "Man, he's actually right? You always want to be testing and just double check, and it's a good thing. I mean, you obviously I think you can come to the table with a certain level of experience that's gonna help narrow down the playing field, narrow down the options, but, you know, you gotta test. So, Robert, I know we're pushing up against the clock. My favorite question to ask our guests. This is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What would you say is your biggest, best tip for our listeners to go beyond seven figures?
I think mindset is critical because you're always gonna have bad days, and you've just gotta pull through. I think it's incredibly important to have people around you who are supportive of you, both family and friends, but also coaches. I'm never gonna be in business for the rest of my career without having a coach and mastermind available to me. Never. It's never gonna happen. I will spend the money because it's important to me. It would have saved me. That's actually the most relevant thing I can say.
What was it about the experience that has you saying, you know what? I will always bring a coach or a mastermind. What specifically do you think made that connection for you?
You know, this year has been an incredibly interesting year because of all the changes that are happening and how we price our products and services, how clients want to engage with us. So we're testing a lot of different things in line with that sprint test, right? So I never want to guess, I just want to know. And what I needed is more ideas, more insights. I need people who can know more than me about things that I don't know of because all I know is advertising. Like I said, I didn't get into the business for standard operating procedure or invoicing or accounting. I got into business because I like advertising. That's really what I'm passionate about. So now I need people in my corner who know a lot of things about the stuff that I don't know about. I've shared this with you, you know, 2 things. Number 1, working with Stephanie is incredible because it's just great to talk to her. I can feel like I get rejuvenated when I have conversations with Stephanie. The second thing is on a weekly basis, the highlight of my weeks are having the 1.5-hour conversations with the board of directors. It is so inspiring for me because every time I'm on those conversations, it's really cool for me to, get insight into what the challenges that other business people are facing, so that's really cool. I hear ideas that I can use in my business that don't take a ridiculously long time to deploy, and it's because the trust is there. So I stopped listening to podcasts. I used to listen to like the All In podcast and some industry podcasts. So now anytime I'm driving or going somewhere, I'm listening to your 10-minute tactics that are usually longer than 10 minutes, by the way, which I love. Like, how many 10 minutes can you listen to? Like, they're 30 minutes, and they're fantastic. I listen to these because I wanna learn something while I'm driving. Like, I wanna be connected to you guys because every time I'm driving, then it's like, okay, I listen to the conversation, then I have my voice recording, and I say, "Okay, action items," and I list myself 3 action items I need to take when I get back into my computer and can actually type it all out. It's such a much more productive use of my time than listening to talking heads.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, again, as I mentioned several times, really together we're better. And I have the unique benefit of really working with some of the top CEOs on the planet, right? So, I mean, half the time, I'm sitting there walking away with notes myself, because everybody is there and able to bring in different ideas and different perspectives. And I was talking with somebody who attended the board session for the first time. I said, "So, what stood out for you?" And she said, "You know, what stood out for me is that I'm not alone with the problems that I'm facing right now. I'm shocked at how many people have the same problems that I'm faced with right now." And it is sort of like, if you don't have problems, if you don't have challenges, you're not trying hard enough, number one. And it doesn't matter if you're doing $1 million a year or you're doing $500 million a year. It's just the depth of the problems change.
Right. 100%. I remember the feeling of starting my business and taking the financial risk that I took where I started. I thought, "Oh, man, it'll get easier when I have more money in the pocket." But you just take bigger risks, relatively speaking, but the risk is still it feels the same in your gut.
Yeah,
And when right? So then I'm looking like at exponential. I'm looking at Elon Musk. This guy's spending billions of dollars, taking massive risks. It's the same feeling of risk. He might I don't know what he feels in his gut and how anxious he feels about it, but it's just more money, but it's the same amount of risk.
yeah. I was talking to the CEO of a $500 million company, and he's like,
Yeah.
"The problem is when I make a mistake, everybody in the world knows about it." That in and of itself becomes a big problem, right?
Right, because that moves markets.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting, right? So, as Tony Robbins told me, big people have big problems, little people have little problems. You can tell the size of a person by the size of the problems they have, right? So,
That's a badge of honor.
yeah, that is. Problems are opportunities, right? Anyway, all right, Robert, people want to get a hold of you and learn more about Brill Media. Where do we send them? So that's Brill Media, Bril Media .co. And then if you want, go to brillmedia.co/sprint test. And if you're looking for additional strategies, tips, and information to help your business grow faster, more predictably, and less dependent on you, check us out over at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Got Out with my friend Robert Brill, and I will see you in another episode.